the coach calls me in his office and he's like, "I've heard you've been playing well with the reserves. We got one more big game against this Spanish team that's playing against the first team. It's our last preseason game. Let's come. Like, just see if we can get you involved." So again, I'm not at any threat. And then all of a sudden they throw me in the starting lineup. I walk into the stadium for the first time. I've never even trained with these dudes. And now I look on the whiteboard and I'm starting against 25, the Spanish La Liga top team against, 25,000 in the stadium that night. I ain't never even been to a stadium before. Like, I've played against 500 people, maybe 1,000 in a college NCAA tournament game or something. Like, that was it. And all of a sudden I'm on the whiteboard and he doesn't tell me, and he throws me into the mix. And I, again, my point of this story is that I didn't have time to compete against these dudes in training so they could hate me. It was like, this guy's our new teammate, let's give him a shot. And then I'm like freaking out because I didn't think I'd go from here to like way beyond the screen. You know what I mean? Like, but I knew that this was my big opportunity, and I'm sitting in the stall in the bathroom, like freaking out, having like a slight panic attack because he didn't prep me at all.
Welcome back to Life After Sports 23. We have a special guest today, Jay Demerit. And it's funny, too, because he's actually a Wisconsin kid, and Greg obviously played for the Brewers, so they got a lot in common there. I'm sure they're going to talk about that a lot. But it's just that determination that I want to know about today. But Jay played professional soccer, football, whatever you call it, whatever part of the world you're from. And he has a very interesting story. So we'll get right into it. Greg, go ahead and take it away.
Hey, Jay, I want to say thank you for coming on the show, Life After Sports 23. And it was a pleasure just reading your story, knowing that you are from the Midwest, but not only that, but the Wisconsin area. You know what I mean? So I already knew you're going to be a good guy, and, Josh was saying, how do you think, what was his determination? What was his drive? I said, well, most people from Wisconsin, just to survive those winters, you got to have a drive and a determination. You know what I mean? So, and to be able to play a sport outdoor like you did, yeah, I just want to say it's a pleasure. Nice to meet you. And my first question before we get into you, were you a Brewers fan? That's what me and Josh had a bet. Yeah, I was going to say he might be too young to know about Vaughn's Valley.
Oh no, I was at many of Brewers games. Collected a many of cards, a Topps individual card with your name on it, Greg. So as a kid that grew up in Wisconsin, we don't have much else to do than watch sports, and if we're old enough, eat drink beers, and if we're young enough, eat cheese. And so that is a trifecta of how our foundations are laid in Wisconsin. But certainly community and to your point, being nice and driven is something that comes in with our code, that code of resilience, I guess, so to speak, Josh, that you talk about. But yeah, no, for me, it was just growing up in Wisconsin was, it's Green Bay in particular. As a kid from Green Bay, Wisconsin, I always tell my friends it's a town of just under 100,000 people when I was there, and then there's 80,000 in the stadium on a Sunday. So it's a pretty unique community to grow up in. It's community focused, but it is really related on helping each other. Asking each other. That's what I love about Wisconsin, and I still go back there all the time. And it's when you get to Wisconsin, people ask you how they are, and they mean it, and they say how are you, and there's a genuine niceness to the culture there because they actually do care. And I think that growing up in that culture, especially as a big light team like the Green Bay Packers, and big mentors and people I could look to like a Brett Favre. He played with such a fun environment, almost a childlike environment, but he was staying after games. He integrated with the fans, and the Brewers were doing the same thing in my world. And so I grew up definitely as sports icons, people of Wisconsin, as aspiring us to get out of our little towns. And that was for me the big thing. And I wanted to, when I left university, or sorry, high school, Green Bay really taught me like that core community. Don't let that go.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say Midwest people are special in that aspect that they do. It's about family. It's about community, and they generally do care about one another. And I was blessed to spend my first 8 years there. A lot of people they didn't like Wisconsin. My kids were born there. They're Packer fans. I'm a 49er fan. I was just at Green Bay in Green Bay for the 49er Packer game. So I was outnumbered. The nice people at Miller had a box though, because you know how cold it gets up there. So I was able to sit in the box at the stadium. But tell us a little bit about growing up. How did you become the Mister, like you said, soccer, football, depending on what part of the world you're from? What got you intrigued, and what made you lead to your path to say, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to go overseas. I'm going to bet on myself. It's we had another gentleman, on that was in the Negro Leagues, and he had $20, and his journey started with $20. And then we hear your story. You bet on yourself. You know what I mean? You said, I believe in myself, and I'm going to go over there and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. How does
Hmm.
it? How do you get to that point?
Well, I think that's the number one question, especially as we kind of give that story back. It's like, well, what made you go and do that? And I think for me, there was a couple major factors. One, I knew I was a name on a paper, but I knew my name on that list was really below, like far below than the people that would get drafted. So, I take a chance on myself first by trying to leave my hometown. Again, Wisconsin built me, but I knew my only scholarship offer out of high school was to the University of Green Bay. It's a small D1 school. I would have been, I was the player of the year in that town, so I got my name in the paper, and I was this player. But really, that was my only exit, was to go to get a scholarship in my hometown. Which again, I'm looking at it going, is this a big fish in a small town kind of idea, or do I want to go and challenge myself against better, more regionally based players down in Chicago, all that kind of stuff? So I had a couple conversations with people, and my high school coach just happened to be the ex coach of UW Green Bay, so he had college coaching experience, knew that industry, and he said, Jay, if you want to leave, I'll try to find you a team. And so he called up the Illinois Chicago, same conference as UW Green Bay, but now in a different location for me to go and yeah, they had an art degree that I wanted to go to, but for me, it was about challenging myself in a new environment with better players. Because I didn't know, I'm just in this little pond, and I don't. I need to in order to make those decisions. And again, that's the point of this conversation. Why was I able to do it? Well, one, because I left and went to a place like Chicago, good players, regional experts, big colleges, all that kind of stuff. I put myself in an ecosystem that let me really figure out if I was good enough. And so when I did that, I changed positions from forward to defender, and then I started becoming even better. And so by the end of my college career, I'm a D1 All American, honorable mention. So that means I'm like, I don't know, 100th on the list, 150th. But in my world, Stanford, Clemson, Duke, all of those colleges were first, right? Not University of Illinois Chicago. Like I'm down there on the list, but I'm now realizing in my reality of the situation and really managing how am I going to make the decisions that I made was okay, you're good enough, you're on the list, but your list to get drafted is quite short. And because you didn't go to academy clubs, and I wasn't on the U14 team for the Chicago Fire, and I didn't play ODP for Illinois, I wasn't on that list. I was a kid from Green Bay, Wisconsin that played three sports until he was 18. And so I had these core values. And so I felt like I knew what I was seeing. I wasn't shading my opportunities. I saw where I'd been. I saw where I'd come from, but now I had succeeded in a place like Chicago that said, okay, maybe you are good enough, but now you got to weigh up the opportunity. And for me, getting drafted wasn't the opportunity. I wasn't on that list, and so then I had to weigh up some other options. It's like if I'm going to play in Division 2 professional soccer in America, I'm going to make $18,000 as a walk on, and I'm going to finish my degree in University of Chicago and become a designer, and I could make 40 out of college from that. So I'm like, should I stay in America, take a chance, or whatever? But then my friend in Chicago at the time was English, and he's like, I'm moving back to London to live with my mom. He's like, have you ever thought about starting at the bottom over there? And so then that opened up a whole nother mindset for me to say, you know what, like I got to do it the hard way anyway. I'm weighing up these options to say, okay, I am good enough. I'm playing against and with all these guys getting drafted to the MLS. I'm playing against these guys and I'm doing well. I'm just not on the list. I saw that as something that wasn't a deterrent. It was just like a reality. And so by no means am I saying I'm not good enough. I'm just saying I'm not in that conversation yet. So I gotta start my own conversation. To your point, Greg, to your question, it's like I gotta figure this out my own because no one's given me that shot. I gotta create that on my own. And so I can either weigh up this opportunity in a big fish, or sorry, big pond, small fish idea. That's England. 96 professional teams, 4 professional divisions, 180 divisions under that I can start with to get myself into this environment that I knew I could potentially succeed at. I knew it was a much bigger pond, but for me, the opportunity was actually better because I wasn't on a list and I could start and be on a big pond so I can get seen by a bunch of different people instead of signing for 18 grand and being, with 4 people watching me in North America. Like that for me didn't seem like a good opportunity.
Right. So I mean, did you have siblings that played soccer? I mean, tell us about your youth. Did you have siblings? I mean, did your parents support you in that aspect?
Yeah, I started as a straight up athlete. Both my parents were athletes, gym teachers and coaches, and so I was just in sports. My grandparents were gym teachers and coaches. We come from a track family. My grandma and my dad both have meets in Wisconsin named after them over the many years of them coaching in
Awesome.
Wisconsin. And so the Demerit name generally is synonymous with track and field. I was always on the track from when I was 2. I'm running around. My dad was a high school track coach for 40 years, and so I was always at the meets and running around and doing my thing and played basketball in the winters. As you said, there's a lot of snow, so you're not playing too much soccer. They didn't have the big indoor facilities that they do now, but um, I was just a generalized sports fan, a sports player. I had a lot of kind of soft skills in that competitive environment growing up with coaches, asking good questions. Participation was key, but it was in a holistic way. And I think that in the end helped me a lot. It helped me adjust to positions, it helped me be more coachable, it helped me understand a lot of team environments. And as I kind of moved into the professional game, and again, we'll get to this in a little bit, but by, year 3 as a professional, I was captain of my team, chosen, and for the rest of my career for another 10 years. And so, that I know set me up for better leadership later because I had a holistic environment growing up, because I did a lot of things. It really helped with my soft skill set that allowed me to get into leadership once I got into that professional sports game.
Okay, right on. I mean, that's awesome. Like I said, they're built different, but I just want to know who, so you had a support system, growing up during that era, they said, if someone said you couldn't do something, I had my support system, hey, prove them wrong. Don't prove them right, prove them wrong. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I think now, it was called constructive criticism when we were growing up. Now it's called they're bitching at me or they don't like me or, they're calling me no good. And, so I'm glad I grew up at the time that I did because, you know, they told me the truth. They didn't tell me what I wanted to hear, and
Hmm.
I think as long as someone tells you the truth and you have that support system, it's how many times you get up because we're all gonna get knocked down, right? But how many
Hmm.
times do we get up? And, I think that's the divide. That's what separates the ones quote unquote that make it per se that don't make it
Hmm.
because you don't have to be a sports person or MLB, you know, NHL, NBA, MLS. I mean, you can make it in all walks of life. I think sports is the segue to learning how to work with people and realizing that you need that in life. You know what I mean? So I think
100%. And I think one of the things for me too is that, especially as you get into like, trials and things, everyone's always talking, right? Everyone, oh, you go see this coach, go check out this team, go do other, and there's all these opinions, right? So it's like, again, you kind of said it, like there's this one devil in your shoulder that's saying, I got to prove those people wrong. I gotta stand up to this challenge. No one else believes in me, whatever. And so there's always that. And that's a good driver and a motivator for all of us, I think. Then for me, it was always like my good angel was like, no, this is your jam. This is you versus you conversation. This isn't a let's go do that as well. Because I think if you focus too much on that side, again, both are relevant in my experience. You got to have the one that says, going to stand up to people's opinions. But then there's also this good angel that's like, dude, you got this. You don't need anything. This is a you versus you conversation. Let's prove yourself right instead
there
of
you go.
proving other people wrong. And I think I did. I listened to this angel a lot, especially as I got into enough trial situations where I trusted this one more almost because if you're trying to rely on things that aren't yours, other people's energies and opinions, a lot of times if you attach yourself to them, you're going to waste some of that energy that you're going to need to do it the hard way. And I think for me, it was about trying to trust in that one. Like you've done the work, you've done the research, you know why you're here with this intentional piece of like, I know I can do this for me, not because that one coach in Chicago told me I'd never make it. Yes, that's a good driver, but it's also like I tried to make sure that I was relying on my drivers too.
Right. Yeah, you never lose a sight of your own self, right? Because
Exactly.
you put the hay in the barn, and you had those dreams way before you met that coach in Chicago, right? And then,
Exactly.
yeah, and I think it's I think if kids went back to dreaming, instead of wanting or wishing, we dreamt as kids. I
Hmm.
see myself playing in the World Series, see myself making it. Whatever per se that is. Like you said, it can be a designer, it can be whatever it is, but being the best at whatever we dream of, and we need to go back to that so we can see ourselves in those situations. And then the next question is, how do we get from point A to point B? It's easy to
Hmm.
say something, it's easy to say you want it, but your walk and your work will determine how if you're willing, if it's really important to you. And
Hmm.
so that leading up to my next question, just betting on yourself. I guarantee you said, I'm just going to go after your roommate said, hey, man, I'm going back to England. Have you thought about coming? That was your bet. That was your.
Yeah. You think I got any crazy looks when you can't even make it in America, but yet you're going to the biggest jungle in world soccer and saying, "Oh, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it over there." But that's literally exactly what happened. And I guess the reality of my situation was like, it sounds like on a macro level to go like, "Oh, I'm just going to go do that," but I didn't come there thinking that I was just going to knock on Manchester United's door and be like, "Hey, I'm this 22-year-old American guy. Like, give me a chance to be a big footballer." It was more like I looked at the net of opportunity and I knew that they had ninth division, 10th division, 11th division clubs that I could walk into and give myself a shot. And from there, I just looked at the lights on the end of those tunnels. In America, what was it? It was sign an MLS contract as a 2-year walk on. That future to me didn't look that rosy, even if you do make it. But if you go to a ninth division team, you're playing well, then you can sign for a first division team, a Premier League, like kind of use them as a launch pad. Now you can get to that light a little bit quicker. And I knew that the concentration of the net of engagement or things that I and opportunities I think was way bigger. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get some life experience. I just finished school. I want to go travel. I want to learn more about my sports culture. And I know that's in a place like England. All those things weighted up. I can always come back and play second division American soccer. Like it's not that hard to do that. Like those opportunities were so crappy that I didn't care. Like I was like, oh, like worst case, I can go back and start at 18 grand again. No problem, no problem. If that desire is still burning inside of you. But like for me, as a co-opportunity, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the big punt because why not? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it weighed up more sensibly for me to go there, even on a life level, than it was for me to stay in a situation that I didn't feel was serving me from the U.S. soccer side.
So, what was the biggest difference you noticed, playing soccer over here? And then all of a sudden, you get off the plane and you got all these different emotions, where to start, where do I go? And what was the biggest difference you noticed between the two worlds and the world of football, per se, soccer?
Well, one is that when you're an American and you walk into England, they definitely don't know why you're there. you know they're back then. There was only a handful of Americans playing in the top leagues in Europe. That was the first question I had to face. So what the hell are you doing here? You're 22. And in England, you're set up, you're releasing guys at 17, 18 because that's when your youth program or your youth academy days are over. So at about 18 or 19, they start to make a decision on you professionally. Do you cross through to the first team and get your first team contract, or do we let you go? Right. And so 95% of people in academy programs get let go at that point. So I come in 3 years beyond that as the stepping stone of what? Like I'm 22, and so I'm already really late. Number two, I'm an American guy that's not supposed to be able to play at all. And number three, I have no experience at all. Like I've played college, university soccer, which they don't even consider anything over there because I didn't come from a residency program. Anywhere in Europe, Brazil, all around the rest of the world, you come from an academy if you are going to come into that league, right? And so I didn't have any of that. And so it was just like pure will and I guess a little bit of a naive renegade spirit that really allowed me to kind of step into those environments and just and because I come from those environments, I wasn't expecting anything. My ego wasn't driving that ship. It was my curiosity. It was my drive to again to prove that I belong there, almost to myself, but also just again, there was that secondary thing. Like no one's picked me, but I'm going to pick myself, and I'm going to show people that I'm here to be a good player and to make it. And I think all those pieces continue to get me out of bed, or get me to crawl through that hole in the attic and do another night.
So let me ask you this. I know, you know, sometimes when you cross into someone else's world, the support system isn't that, because now you're trying to take one of the natives' jobs, correct? You know
That's
what I
correct.
mean? So how did the players treat you? I mean, how did that go down? Were they giving you that wide open pass, or were they, setting you up a little bit behind you, or hitting you extra hard? When there's a fight for the ball. I mean, how did?
Yeah, no, it was, yeah, no, it did. It actually is funny. It's a good question because it's like, just going a little bit deeper into the reserve system. So there's two teams anywhere in the world you play, especially even now in the MLS. You have your first team and then you have like your reserve team. And so there's generally 29 to 30 players in a professional soccer team. So about 18 of them, they're involved with game day operations. They're the ones, 11 play, 18 suit up. And then from like 18 to 29, these guys play in a whole second league called the reserve league. These are guys that are 17, they're 22, they're coming back from injuries. That whole reserve league is its own ecosystem. And so as I came in, I'm not even I'm not showing any threat to these first team guys. I just see them at lunch. I'm just hanging out. I'm just like, oh, there's that first team center back. He's 34, I'm 22, and I'm like, wow, like one day I hope to be that. You know what I mean? That'd be cool. And so in a way, it's good that you separate, or I separated myself from that because they weren't looking at me like a threat. And I came in almost in a baptism of fire. I played in one reserve team game, and then the coach, heard I played pretty well, and they were looking for young center backs because the two guys that were on the first team were 33 and 34, both Premier League players, both good resumes on big money. But in a way, like for Watford at the time, when I got my trial there, they were like, we need some young blood because we can't, if we just come down from the Premier League, they couldn't afford both guys. And so they needed someone like me. And again, it's serendipity or whatever you want to call it, put me into that situation that they needed me as much as I needed them. I go out and I play in this game. And the coach calls me in his office and he's like, I've heard you've been playing well with the reserves. We got one more big game against this Spanish team that's playing against the first team. It's our last preseason game. Let's come. Like, just see if we can get you involved. So again, I'm not at any threat. And then all of a sudden they throw me in the starting lineup. I walk into the stadium for the first time. I've never even trained with these dudes. And now I look on the whiteboard and I'm starting against 25, the Spanish La Liga top team against, 25,000 in the stadium that night. I didn't even been to a stadium before. Like I've played against 500 people, maybe 1,000 in a college NCAA tournament game or something. Like that was it. And all of a sudden I'm on the whiteboard and he doesn't tell me, and he throws me into the mix. And I again, my point of this story is that I didn't have time to compete against these dudes in training so they could hate me. It was like, this guy's our new teammate, let's give him a shot. And then I'm like freaking out because I didn't think I'd go from here to like way beyond the screen. You know what I mean? Like, but I knew that this was my big opportunity, and I'm sitting in the stall in the bathroom, like freaking out, having like a slight panic attack because he didn't prep me at all. And then I thought I'd just like get to warm up with the team or something. I didn't even train with these guys. Like, how am I gonna? But again, as the story goes, I walk out, I go in the bathroom stall, I like punch myself in the face and get myself all pumped up, and I'm like, okay, this is it. Like, what do you mean? Like this, you're scared of this opportunity because he didn't tell you? You know what I mean? This is the time that you guys step up now because this is what you've been sleeping on somebody else's floor for the last year, like waiting for this opportunity. And so I went out there, I played and didn't let that beat me. And then I basically played the whole game. They didn't take me out, and they basically called me into the office after the game and was like, "What'd you think?" And I'm like, "I think you're an asshole." And he starts laughing and he's like, well, Jay, like he's like, honestly, he's like, there's 1,000 people in line outside, and he's like, so in these opportunities we got to take chances on players, and this is how we do it sometimes. He's like, we saw this as an opportunity for you to step into those environments and see how you could swing, sink or swim. He's like, do you got an agent, or he's like, and I lied and I said I did. And he's like, well, let's offer you a 1 year deal. And so that was it. So like, again, like, long story short, like I didn't really have time for these guys to hate me. I was like nobody to nobody, and then I was their teammate. And so there was There's no real crossover of that environment. And then I came in with that humble view of like, listen, guys, I got a year. I appreciate this opportunity. Let me learn about everything, and that kind of apprenticeship type mindset that I had to build coming from the path that I had to come from. And then all of a sudden I'm a player, and all of a sudden I kind of step into that apprentice role. But then at the end of the day, the guy that was in front of me got injured like 6 games into the season, and it was a 6 week groin pull. So I played 7 games in a row, and then they sold him at Christmas, and I played 30 games my first season as a starter. And it was like I wasn't there. No one ever heard of me, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, you're in, you're a starter. Year two again. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but we get promoted to the Premier League, and I score the goal, gets man of the match in front of 60,000 people, and no one's ever. And I'm standing there with this trophy and man of the match, and no one in America has ever heard of me.
So yeah, so
I mean, for me, I didn't really care. Like I was just like, this is something for me that I thought I could do. And I think I remember like the speech on the big jumbotron after the game was like that. It was like, you know, we don't we don't know how far we can go until we put ourselves into situations we can succeed. And I just that's all I tried to do was putting myself into situations to perform and to succeed. And I think when you break it down that simply, it doesn't become daunting. It doesn't become this like unattainable thing. It's like, oh, I'll move here and put myself into the ninth division. Oh, wow, you're thriving. Cool. Well, put yourself into the first division. Cool. Well, that worked. And now you're like, well, can I put myself into a situation like 60,000 people and perform? Yeah, I can. I can prepare for it properly. I can skill set. I can, grow my skill sets all year. I can stay after extra training. I can work on my long balls, my passing. And so when I can walk into that at the end of year two, I'm ready to perform. I'm ready to be there, and I deserve to be there because I've worked and I've been conscious enough to understand what it takes to actually improve every day. And I think that coming from that humility environment of having to do it the hard way really it doesn't sway that mindset maybe as easier as the gifted kids that just get told how good they are all the time. You don't have to go through those adverse situations to really learn about yourself, but also how you can continue to perform in those high performance environments or those high pressure environments. Because it's like if you deserve to be there and you know that because you've actually done a lot more adverse work, you've done more character building stuff than a lot of the ones that aren't ready for that adverse experience or that high pressurized situation, then maybe they don't perform as well. And for me, I think that was ended up being what money considered my greatest adversity. It turned into one of my greatest gifts because when I got there, I was no way in hell letting that opportunity slip because I know what it took to get there from my adverse situation.
and you only get one chance to, you know what, you got to take advantage of your
Yeah,
opportunity. After that first game, because I remember getting called up to the big leagues and all that, and you see your speech. What was the first thing you did, and who was the first phone call? What was the first phone call, and who was it to?
definitely my parents. Again, they were always my greatest supporters. I've always had crazy ideas to do things that I know they would never think of. You know what I mean? Like, go, you got a full ride to stay in your hometown university, and you're not gonna take it. Like that's my first initial conversation from mom, who of course wants me to stay in our town and be a college soccer player in her town and on a full ride, so they don't have to pay for college. You know what I mean? Like I chose a pay to play system to go to Chicago. You know what I mean? Like so my parents are kind of used to that, like Jay's crazy ideas, but in a way, like they've always been on board. And that's my point of my story is like they've always, instead of pushing up against me, they've always said, how can we support you? And I think that is funny. This week I was talking to my mom because they were in Whistler where I live in Canada still. And my mom's like a really family oriented person, but she starts talking about how, my whole life I always wanted everyone around. I want the cousins there. I want my friends there. I want all this thing. And my mom just wants us, the immediate family. And I was like, she sometimes thinks that I'm choosing all these other people over her, but I'm like, no, mom, like you have to understand, like I take risks and I do this stuff because I know I'm safe. I know I'm supported. And so I can take these crazy risks because I know if I mess it up, I'm still going to be loved and I'm still going to be able to live on your couch if I need to. You know what I mean? Like that enough from a core safety conversation is what a true unconditional supportive person like a parent can do and can give. And I had to remind her that my whole life, even as a 45-year-old now, I continue to take a ton of risks because I feel safe from my support system. And like, as much as she might not see that world through my lens, I need to make sure that those people are understanding how that support allows me to be successful.
So you just said, you reside in Canada now. So Milwaukee wasn't cold enough. You had to move to Canada, or what made you move to Canada?
Being a ski town, nonetheless. No, I was married to a an Olympic gold medalist in skiing. She's from Whistler. We have a 9-year-old up in Whistler, so I'm doing a lot of parenting. I run teenage youth programs in the summer, and now for the last 2 years, I've been developing an app with EA, which is the big video game company based out of Vancouver as well. They're in California as well now. EA, it's in the game. Uh, it, yeah, and so we are launching this summer finally after a few years of kind of developing and fundraising and all the rest of that stuff. And so it's like a gamified masterclass essentially. So where we take celebrities, brands, but we gamify the experience into like an empowerment platform for people to self help, to dive, to really dive into their own skill sets. It's all built around the brain, not your face, and so it's a self reflection piece based on masterclass people and brands that are going to help kind of teach you new things, gain new knowledge, things like this that really help empower people instead of using social media as this like toxic place for misunderstanding.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So let me ask, yeah, that's a great thing. So, Jay, so the 17, 18-year-old United States soccer player to the 17, 18 academy player overseas, what's the biggest difference?
One was built in North America based on the priority of speed, power, and athleticism, and the other one was built on a technical foundation where it's about touches, passing, the technical side of the game, and then developed into a speed, power athlete. So the foundations are different. One is built on technical ability, and then athleticism second, where our system's built on speed, power, athleticism, and then we'll turn them into a technical player.
What do you think, in your own words? I mean, in your experiences, what works best? What do you think works? What makes
I mean, in
the
all honesty, because I've actually been in both systems. I think it's both can learn from each other. I think that the answer is somewhere in the middle. I think the curriculums need to become smarter and more holistic. Again, one of the things that I do is like, who cares about your skill set if the pressure's on and your mindset can't take it? Like, what? Why aren't we training the mind and skill sets like self confidence or soft skill sets? Like, I don't need anybody else to take care of myself. So when I got this opportunity, I'm good. Like, I'm not going to call on other people when because I don't have soft skill sets of mentality or I can be on my own. I think that's a big step. You see, even in my youth development programs or for teenagers, it's like when we can teach these kids soft skills and self understanding, it's amazing how less coaching and leadership we have to do. Like it's actually the opposite. And so for me, I would say from a technical standpoint, we need to do a better job in North America of giving kids the reins to be technical, giving kids the range to train on their own, to be creative on the ball. All these things that like Brazil and Spain and all these people do, and then the Dutch, like they are just go be free, go do a bunch of other things. Forget, Brazilians like they're so creative on the ball because they just go to the beach with their bare feet and they play for like 9 hours straight. And you think that that's not going to transfer into why they are the most creative beings on the ball. Like, of course, that's why. And so I think for our side, especially from the North American side, like we're so diverse in culture, like we're not really doing a good job of setting up our next generational kids to be whatever it is that it is. So it's like street ball players in New York or like, Brazilians that are like in some kind of place somewhere else, you know what I mean? And then you got this, you know, big, strong, athletic kids from Texas that are just like 6'4", 225-pound forwards that are just absolute animals, like that are doing speed, power, focusing. And then you put all those guys together in a national team setup and you let them all be themselves. Like imagine if we could create a team like that. When we had our 2009, 2010 team in for the U.S., we had arguably the most successful U.S. national team in history. We snapped Spain's win streak. We made it to a major final as an international team. We lost to Brazil 3-2 in a major final. We won our group. We were the first team to win our group for the World Cup in 2010. Like all those things. And I look back on the team now and I look at like, I get asked all the time, like, what's up with the team now? Like, why aren't they winning or why aren't they having those big games? And I'm like, well, mainly because back then, like we were a bunch of character survivor guys that all had to work our asses off to be in a survival mode to survive in Europe. Right now, it's like they come from all these places. and they're like, oh, we'll take that good American international guy. Like there's no survival built into that story. And so like when our world, it was like Clint Dempsey was like a renegade from Texas. I was like this kid nobody picked from Wisconsin, and I was just a lockdown like savage out there. Like I was just a hunter. I wasn't pretty on the ball. I wasn't any technical at all, but I could shut dudes down. And that was my character, and that's all I did. And then Gooch was next to me, and he was a much prettier athleticism guy that could win everything in the air, and I was the dog that picked up his scraps essentially. But all of us had our own unique characters and why we made all that successful. Landon Donovan, the little magician in the middle. Give him the ball when it matters. He'll connect us. He'll have this little character to help us win because he's that good, right? We don't need you all the time, but when it comes down to it, we need your skill set and that like exemplary. You're the next hero. And then you got guys like, Steve Cherundolo, captain at Hanover, played 15 years in the Bundesliga. No one knows about him, but he's literally the most consistent guy in all of American history. And all he does is win the ball, keep it. Doesn't give the ball away. He's a 9 out of 10, consistent. So all of us got to do exactly who we are and what we were good at. But we all had to fight our asses off to get to those environments. And I think that when we collectively put those things together, because we had those unique characters, we all fit. And I think right now we're trying to fabricate those characters. We're trying to say, hey, you got to go be the big guy that goes out there and beats people up. That guy's like, what? I've never done that. I'm just like a good big back player, but the character for me to survive hasn't been built in. I've just been coddled and got my shoes tied for me for the last 20 years with all my meals paid for and my jersey folded. Like we're gonna ask you to fight for that character when it going gets tough when we play against Argentina. Yeah, right. It's not gonna
No,
work because the
no,
Argentina's gonna come and they're gonna walk all over us because they've been trained through that survival mentality because they grew up in the slums and they had one chance to make it and they did. That player. You know
you
what I
know what?
mean? We're not creating those stories enough through the character of who we are as Americans to transfer that into these big environments where all of a sudden we can beat the world's best teams. Like it just doesn't compute because the character behind those players it's not actually as real as it used to be.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because same thing in baseball. You know how the majority is Latin now. It's from South America, and like you said, they have academies. They have one chance to get out, or they're going to make 5 pesos a month if they don't come from a certain part where they can get educated and get a degree and maybe better themselves. 99% of that culture, you're going to pay me to play baseball, and I'm gonna hit bottle caps on the street. I don't have shoes. I will fill balls off of unpaved roads and all this other stuff. And over here, you're right. In North America, we have, you know, moms and dads thinking their kids are going to starve for being on the field for 2 hours. They're bringing them sandwiches in between innings, and they're giving
Yeah,
them Gatorade, and then they're carrying their bags and their equipment afterwards. You,
yeah,
you,
and telling
you,
the coach that he's gotten it wrong the whole time.
yeah, yeah. You know what? Instead of letting these kids go out and figure it out, part of the battle is, like I said, I'm glad I grew up in the time that I did because if I got thrown out still in the base, the coach is like, "Hey, go again. What'd you do
Yes,
wrong? Go again." Now,
yeah,
if you get thrown out still in the base, you can't run ever again.
yes,
And it's called travel ball. These kids don't use their minds at all.
hmm,
Everything is structured. They never have a practice. They never do anything on their own. They don't play pickle. They don't play strikeout. They don't play over the line. They don't play right
yeah,
field's closed, left field's closed. If it's not a practice, they don't do it. You know what I
hmm,
mean? And I think that is setting us up in North America to be behind the rest of the world when it comes to competing. Not
hmm,
not only in sports, but all aspects of the life. Because a hungry dog finds a way to eat. A full
hmm.
dog, he can take some days off, and that's the guy you don't want in the hole next to you.
Yeah, and
So
the bed's already made, and it's right there. You know what I mean? You can go lay in if you want, but it's not going to make you a better or more huntable dog. You know what I mean? Like you gotta go and do those types of things and figure it out. To your point, and I think yes, I don't think that we do a good enough job in creating those environments, both artificially and in reality. I think one of the things that I try to do in my coaching environments and youth is literally artificially create these things, so at least they think about it and at least it's like it might be an artificial thing, but it's like do a fake interview of when you lost the game and what's that feel like for a second. Like we do these fake press conferences and where it's like we put pressure on because the room's watching you, but then we fake the scenarios and then the kids have to draw a scenario and they got 2 minutes to figure out what they're going to say and then the pressure's on. It's a mimic to something of speaking under pressure to use your brain when it matters and or when somebody's asking you a question you might not have thought of, but it's also like a transferable skill to when they're in an interview someday at 20 when they're not an athlete and they're going to go, hey, we didn't, I know you prepared for this, but I'm going to ask you something that you didn't prepare for. Are you ready? It's a metaphor,
Right.
but it's the same thing. Like, can we do that from our curriculums? Can we do a better job of putting these kids under false pressure so then when it matters, they actually know what it feels like a little bit? So I think there's a lot of that. I think training can get more creative. I think ways that we build programming and the curriculums within that program can get better. And really like, peeling the layers back of practice. Like right now we're just like reading things on the internet and saying that it's ours instead of going out and creating practices that help people understand that if it is theirs or not. Instead of just saying, oh, I know about that. And I say, oh, how did you learn about that? And the kids will be like, oh, I read it on the internet. And I'm
Or
like, oh,
my mom and dad told me, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
The mom
exactly.
and dad, the kids aren't even reading it. The mom and
Yeah.
dad say, well, I look at this and I hate to put you on the spot, but I mean, who's the most God gifted, best football, soccer player you ever played with? Or I say played with first. And then part B to that is played against.
With, I would say, our national team keeper, Tim Howard, great, incredible athlete. He dealt with a lot of adversity personally too. He had Tourette's growing up, and obviously
Did
still
not
has
know
it.
that.
That alone, the barriers he broke through to get to that point. He was one of the first goalkeepers to really be successful in the Premier League. He was Manchester United Premier League Player of the Year, his first ever season as an American in the Premier League. I went dealt with a lot of adversity to leave there. Alex Ferguson did a full 180 on him and sent him to Everton. Turned out to be an Everton legend. So all of those reasons, and then he was just an incredible athlete. The way that as a goalkeeper, you're in the back of your ear as a center back. So him and I worked quite closely together. He's not always saying pleasantries, but he certainly kept me on my toes and turned me into a better player. Just by putting me under pressure and really playing with me in those super high performance environments. World Cups and Confederations Cups and playing against the world's best players. Like you really do have to. As much as you're good individually, teamwork at that level, communication in your box to get crosses or to receive information. I think he really helped me on those types of things. So I'd say him as far as with, and then against probably two. One was a Chelsea player named Didier Drogba. He played for Ivory Coast. He was an absolute savage. He was 6'2", 6'3", 215 pounds of pure muscle and speed, and he could beat you in the air. He could beat you on the ground. He was from the Ivory Coast. He was an absolute savage out there. Like he'd come in elbows. He would you can't move him, you can't beat him, you can't race him, you can't do anything. And so those are the games you find pretty tough. And then you got these kind of crazy guys. I would say the other guys, Thierry Henry, say no more as far as his name, Arsenal legend, French World Cup winner. He was just smooth as silk. He's one step ahead of you in everything that you do. I would say those two because I had to play right up against them. I've played against Messi and Ronaldo
I was going to be
times
like,
too.
who's the better? Who's better?
Yeah, I mean, Ronaldo's a better athlete, but Messi's more elusive. And so as defenders, like I can pull up against an athlete. That was one of my better traits from an athleticism perspective. So I could speed, I could jump, I could mark, I could be competitive. So against Ronaldo, I probably played better than playing against Messi. But Messi moves so much. So all of a sudden he's at the left back position and now he's on us and now he's at the right back position. So he moves all over the place. And so it's really hard. You're not up against him, put it that way, for the full 90 minutes. So it doesn't feel as daunting. You know what I mean? Like Drogba
Steph
and,
Curry.
and
He's
number
like Steph
nines.
Curry without the ball, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So he's moving all over the place. So you're getting five guys to mark him instead of just you. So those games weren't quite as tough for me because I got a little bit more help than just number nines like Didier Drogba and Thierry Henry. But I would say those two from a one-on-one 90-minute plus perspective were the hardest for me.
Yeah, I've been around hockey players. I've been around football players. I always wanted to ask this question. What happens when you guys are laying on the ground and they have to come out with the stretcher and give you guys water?
Well, I was the guy. I'm the guy. I was the guy kicking those. I was the guy kicking those guys. Going, are you serious? That's not real. You're rolling around. I didn't even touch you, you wimp. I'm like you. I was the guy that didn't like those players. It's so funny whenever I was. Yeah, well, I always tell people I'm a soccer player or whatever I was. And they're like, oh, what's all those people rolling around? Like, why do you guys do that? I'm like, first off, I don't do that. I was the guy kicking the guys that were doing that. And so I'm with you. I know that that's fake and that's embellishment. But they do that to gain advantage. They do that to get that free kick. They do that because they're trying to get a free kick so they can put that ball in that box and get that scoring opportunity. It's the drama of the game. And remember, we play with a lot of dramatic people out there. They're Spanish,
Yeah.
they're Portuguese, they're all of these, flamboyant, beautiful men with like the most tricky haircut with pink shoes. Trying to get it all right. And I'm just out there trying to kick the dude. So it was definitely a dichotomy of thought for me, but I just looked at it as part of the game, and I always try to pride myself on not being cheap too, because that's when guys get you in trouble. Like when that's a lot of that embellishment happens. It's just like when guys aren't playing hard, and they just wait, they'll bait you. But for me, I was consistently just playing hard and playing tough ball, and so like it was hard for them to fake it when I was around. So I tried not to get sent off very often. I only got sent off once in my 12-year career. So it's an art. Defending is an art form just as much as guys that are trying to make some pretty goals. Like trying to, it's a cat and mouse game out there. And for me, I really prided myself on catching those mice.
That's awesome. So you gave us a little bit pre Jay, your career of Jay. So what's going on with Jay now? Well, I mean, I know you talked about your coaching, and I know mental health is big with you, and if you have any foundations, and how can people get a hold of you and reach out to you if they get some advice or talk to you about, soccer or football for their kids or loved
Yeah,
ones?
no, for sure. We do well, generalized teenage leadership programs in British Columbia. I've done them in a bunch of cities in North America too. Those are mainly for teenagers, 12 to 20 years old. We do a lot of mentorship based things. Again, every day that's in our programs, we bring in a mentor that's professional at something else. And so we'll, a 3-day soccer camp, we'll have like a doctor, a chef, and a fire chief or something. And so we've had 54 mentors come through our walls over the last 10 years. And again, really, that's been the catalyst for creating this digital program. And so that's, again, sponsored by EA. They're our founding partner. We're launching this summer with a beautiful game. It's all around soccer, but it's about the holistic view of the education around the game. And so we're actually in LA right now filming. So we got Stu Holden. He's a World Cup player turned now World Cup commentator. He called the World Cup final. What's that transition like? All that kind of stuff. And then you get to like, a current player who teaches you how to do a free kick online in a masterclass way, and then the user's got to go and give that free kick. And so it's like baseline education, but it's about the holistic side of the game. And so you can do a fitness competition from a fitness coach. You can make a smoothie with a nutritionist from said team that talks about cool recovery solutions for your world as a player. And so it's like you're getting this holistic picture of the game through the eyes of ways that you as the young player are going to actually live in that game. We know that one gets to make it, but the 999 should probably go be a nutritionist for that club or be a mental performance coach first as a psychologist. Like if you want to stay in the game, you should. But we want to be that vehicle that helps you understand that. And we do it through the holistic lens of our users, of our mentors, and we do it with a lot of integrated and introspective looking of all that action. And so the brain is your profile, and so you get to know about yourself during this whole journey about what your skills are, how do you get that soft skills, and then now how do you apply them to opportunities that you get to earn.
Does your 9-year-old play?
He does. He's starting to get used to it a little bit more. It's so funny. Like when you have a kid and they, his mom was an Olympic gold medalist in skiing, and his dad played in the World Cup, and so already I feel the pressure for him. Oh, there are people already asking, oh, are you gonna play for Canada? Are you gonna play for the U.S.? And he's like, I don't know, man. I'm 9. I'm trying to mountain bike. I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't even know if I want to play soccer anymore. You know what I mean? If I'm gonna have this pressure, I can feel it already. I can see it. It bothers me sometimes, to be honest. But that's another reason that kind of drives me to create better programming. It's not about my kid; it's about all kids. Why can't we do a better job of setting them up for their own future instead of trying to set them up for my future as a dad? You know what I mean? I'd rather, create programs where they can figure it out. So then I'm actually going to be needed as a support system, not as an answerer.
Right,
I'm not
right.
trying to tell you what to do. I'm here for you to learn that, but I'm here to support you in that journey. And so it's like how we can do that better job as a parent, but also as a program director. I am always looking for new ways that we can do that so we can scale that information and we can help everybody instead of me trying to help my kid. And so, because I've kind of had this knowledge in the game, but also just through 10 years of programming now, and that's why we can build digital programs. We can build it through an app like a company like EA sees the scalability of it. They can help us scale it. And then now we can all combine to say, listen, we got big problems out there through our digital devices. How about we create a better product that allows those kids to maybe, have a better chance at figuring out themselves? And so, that saves us a bunch of work in the end to switch their whole mentality based on all of these terrible things online, instead of saying, hey, here's a better pathway. So on your way out, you can say, thanks, guys. I appreciate those soft skills. I'm going to go give this a shot.
Right, right. So, I mean, that's awesome, man. And I really do appreciate you telling your story. And
Hmm.
but
Well,
but
again, and again, it's actually this one. It's called Rise and Shine.
okay,
RiseXShine.com. If you guys want to find the website, it's just literally simple. RiseXShine.com. You can start to see a little bit more like what we're trying to do, the 10 forms of intelligence, how we're going to kind of gamify that information. And again, we're shooting World Cup players right now for the beautiful game. We're here to shoot Angel FC from the women's side. We got LAFC that we're filming on Sunday. And so we're just going to tell lots of stories around the game. And then once we nail soccer this summer, that's our launch campaign. We go very quickly into music, arts, fashion, design, sport, other sports as well. So 25 is going to be a huge year for us. 26, again, moving into a World Cup year. We're going to be doing a lot of activations around the World Cup. And so look out for Rise and Shine now in the next coming to 12 to 24 months.
yeah, I would love to stay in contact, man. I mean, that's awesome. I'm a big believer in we work everything else but the mental part of it. And like you said, 99.9% aren't going to make it, but they still can be successful and contribute in life, and you're preparing them for that. So I thank you for that. But let's stay in contact. Let's stay connected. We're sort
When
of
we do
brothers,
baseball, again, you're an incredible story that we can use in those genres as well. And that's the best part about community. You could talk to 50 baseball players, but each one of those is going to have their own story, why they made it, their own drive, their own successes, their own adversities, their own breakthroughs, their own character building environments, their own parents. All of those things become episodes within the stories of you. And that for us, it's like that's the beauty of telling stories. It's like you can put all of them under one subject, but 50 stories are going to be all different. And that for us
and
is
it,
to say,
yeah,
to promote those ideas in community. Like we're not trying to make a blueprint that everyone is supposed to have. We're supposed to make a blueprint to say that you're supposed to have for you, not for some other
exactly.
thing that you can't control. Like the only thing you can control is right here. And so our
That's it.
app flips that mirror and says, well, you figure out who you are. Here's a bunch of rad people that are going to help you explain and understand it. But now you get to go and earn your own prize. You get to go earn your own opportunities because you're actually equipped to do it. And that really is the new behavior we're trying to create online, because right now it's actually opposite. We're trying to get validation that way and then turning it inside, and that's not working because it's not ours. But if I'm
Right.
trying to build from here and then I get to give that to my community with purpose and intention, then now we got a better chance. You know what I mean? And so really we're flipping the
Amen.
mirror on what that is and that behavior is online. And that's really what this year is about, is letting people know that and then building curriculums around how they can now practice it and find out for themselves.
No, that's awesome, man. Once again, I want to say thank you for coming on Life After Sports 23. If there's ever anything I can do or we can do for you, let us know, and we will get that app, Josh. We will be supporting and following,
I
and
love it.
everything
No,
comes
and
through
thank you
Vegas.
guys. Thank you guys for
Everything,
amplifying, having me on. Again, it's always important for me to, to share experiences. That for me is the least I can ever do, is stand on and talk about, these unique experiences I got to live, and then how we kind of use them to give them back, man. And then you get these incredible experiences and then we're not giving them back. I feel like we're only giving half our story. And so, happy to be on here, guys, and thanks again for having me, and looking forward to continue to work together.
yeah, and that's what Life After Sports is. It's a platform for people to tell their story, not my story, their story. And
Absolutely.
we're in Vegas, so we know everything comes through Vegas. Give us a shout.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, with that launch party, you guys will be there.
All right, for sure. All
Awesome.
right,
Thank you guys.
all right,
Appreciate it.
Jay, see you, bro.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.